And that was just for Dick Durbin.
Mr. President, in confirming 235 lifetime judges during your administration, we have made history. Not just in a record-breaking number, but in the quality of the individuals who've been nominated and confirmed. I've served on the Senate Judiciary Committee for some time. As a matter of fact, all three of us have served on that committee for some time. And I think personally I probably reviewed over 1,000 judicial nominees in the committee and on the floor. The record is clear. The nominees of President Joseph Biden to the federal bench represent the best of the judiciary, the best of America. When I became chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, filling these vacancies and bringing balance to the court was the highest priority. We faced some extraordinary challenges. The first 2 years of the administration coincided with the longest evenly divided Senate in history. And for the past 2 years, Democrats have held only a narrow majority. On top of that, the Biden administration had fewer vacancies to fill on day one than the Trump administration did, in fact, fewer than half. Still, we succeeded beyond what anyone had hoped for. 235 judges confirmed. More than 1 out of every 4 judges now serving on the judicial bench were nominated by this President Joseph Biden. Because of the arcane and challenging rules of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Democratic members had to be literally sitting in their seats when the roll call was taken for each and every nominee, 235 times. And for that and so much more, I give you a second, if you will, to remember the names of those who served so well. Dianne Feinstein, Sheldon Whitehouse, Amy Klobuchar, Chris Coons, Richard Blumenthal, Mazie Hirono, Cory Booker, Alexei Padilla, John Ossoff, Senator Butler, and Senator Welch. They deserve a round of applause. And I would be remiss if I didn't note the amazing staff that brought us here as well on my side. An extraordinary group of people, starting with Dan Swanson, Phil Brest, who served both in the White House and the committee, Sarah Bauer, Rochelle Yolandi, Charnel Garnbach, Stephanie Angel, Jess Clay, Malik Simmons on the whips part on the floor, and of course, Joe Zogby, the staff director. Let me just say the high point of the last 4 years for me, Mr. President, was when you kept your word and we were able to confirm Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman to serve on the Supreme Court. If you're going to be the first, you've got to be the best, and she is. Certainly the best by every single measure. You kept your word to nominate her, and we have done a great favor to the nation by following through. Let me say in closing this. We are proud of the fact that these nominees had bipartisan support. More than 80% of them received bipartisan support for passing. I also want to thank my friend and colleague of many years, Chuck Schumer. I nagged him and beat up on him and twisted his arm and did everything I could to get our nominees on the calendar, and he came through with flying colors. In fact, in the closing weeks of this session, that was really the focus of our activity to make sure that we reach this 235 number. Thanks, Chuck. I am grateful to be part of this historic opportunity. These men and women will be serving America for decades to come. My friend, Chuck Schumer.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's a great day, and I thank everyone for being here. First, let me begin by thanking President Biden. We are here today because of your leadership, Mr. President. With President Biden working by our side, Senate Democrats have confirmed 235 judges, more than any majority has confirmed in decades. This is historic. We've confirmed more judges than were confirmed under the previous administration, so something no one thought we could do. In fact, we confirm more judges than under any administration going back decades. When people look back at the most consequential accomplishments of the last 4 years, two things will stand out: the legislation we passed between 2021 and 2022, and the historic judges we confirmed to the bench. Now, these are amazing accomplishments. Even more importantly, these judges come just in time. Our democracy faces an uncertain future, and many people are rightly worried. We hear incoming leaders say things about undercutting the well springs of our democracy that make many Americans anxious. The good news is that these judges will be a barrier against attacks on our democratic institutions. At the district level, these judges will have the first and often decisive impact on cases involving voting rights in elections and democracy writ large. Thanks to these judges, it is now far more likely today than it was just a few years ago that these attacks on democracy will be blunted. In short, these judges will be the shield that protects our democracy. So thank you. Thank you, President Biden, for leading the way in strengthening the bench. It couldn't have happened without you. You helped us construct a federal bench that will not only protect our institutions, but also that better reflects on America itself. I want to thank Chairman Durbin for his outstanding work over the last 4 years. He certainly was, as we say in Brooklyn, a nudge. That's a good word. Without Chairman Durbin, we could not have confirmed so many judges in such a short amount of time. He's been an excellent and diligent partner every step of the way. I want to thank all of his staff and the judiciary staff and my staff, Evan, who was here, my great counsel, for the great job they have done. I want to thank also Vice President Harris, who helped us confirm many of these nominees by a deciding vote. Many of them were 50-50. And without her being here, and she had to change her schedule, often at last-minute notice, it might not have happened. Finally, thank you to all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. As Senator Durbin noted, we did have some support from a group of Republican senators, and that helped us. So we thank that as well. Now, it is my pleasure, my sincere pleasure, to turn it over to the person who's led the way in this great effort, our President Joe Biden. Mr. President, what you have done in confirming what you have done in confirming a record number of judges will be one of the most important hallmarks of your legacy, which is, of course, very large and impressive. So thank you for your leadership all these many years. Let us welcome our great President, Joe Biden.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure you're clapping because I finally showed up. I do apologize. We had a very busy schedule the last from New Year's Day on, dealing with two crises, one in Louisiana and one in Las Vegas. And I've assembled the entire defense and intelligence apparatus of the country in the Situation Room, and we've been spending a lot of time there. But I'm going to take another 2 minutes to talk a little bit about that and then go on to what we're here for. I want to give an update on the investigations into yesterday's terrorist attacks in New Orleans and the truck explosion in Las Vegas. I've just come from the meeting, not just to spend, while we prepare these remarks, better part of an hour, from my Homeland Security team. The number of people killed in New Orleans has risen to 15, including the attacker. 35 people were injured. Today, the FBI briefed me that as of now, we have no information that anyone else is involved in the attack. They've established that the attacker was the same person who planted the explosives in those ice coolers in 2 nearby locations in the French Quarter just a few hours before he rammed into the crowd with his vehicle. They assessed he had a remote detonator in his vehicle to set off those 2 ice chests. So there's no question that, remember all the talk about other people were involved, placed in, they have him, they have established he's there, and even established that he had a detonator to explode those ice chests. As I said yesterday, the attacker posted several videos just several hours before the attack, indicating his strong support for ISIS. Federal law enforcement and the intelligence community are actively investigating any foreign or domestic contacts and connections that could possibly be relevant to the attack. And so we're also continuing to investigate whether or not there's any connection between the New Orleans attack and the explosion in Las Vegas. As of now, they've just been briefed. They have not found any evidence of such a connection thus far. I've directed them to keep looking. The individual who rented the truck that exploded in Las Vegas also served as active duty U.S. Army. And the FBI is working with the Department of Defense on investigating, including the service members' possible motives and all those he worked with, who served with him, what things he'd say and do. I directed my team to accelerate these investigations so we have answers to our unanswered questions. They're making every single resource available to get the job done. And we're going to share the facts as soon as I learn them so the American public doesn't have to wonder. In the meantime, like I said last night, New Orleans is a city of tremendous spirit. You can't keep it down. You really can't. And we're seeing that today. The Sugar Bowl is back on. Kickoff is going to take off very shortly. If I don't get this damn thing done, we're going to be in real trouble. And the FBI has handed control of Bourbon Street back to local officials. Security of the area has been reinforced, and they should be open for business later today, the Bourbon Street. People in New Orleans are sending an unmistakable message. They will not let this attack or the attackers' deluded ideology overcome us. None of us should fear that he'll overcome us. We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here. I'll continue to provide updates in New Orleans and Las Vegas as the facts develop. Now to the business at hand. I can't tell you how much I appreciate these 2 men. Not a joke. You know, the fact of the matter is that the Majority Leader Schumer and Chair Durbin, their leadership has been invaluable. You know, from my days of leading the Senate Judicial Committee 200 years ago, I made judicial nominations a priority, and some of you may remember I was involved in some very contentious Supreme Court nominations over the years. And today I want to recognize a major milestone. The Senate recently confirmed its 235th federal judge, which is the largest number of confirmations in a single presidential term since the early 80s. That includes 1 Supreme Court justice, 45 Circuit Court of Appeal judges, 187 District Court judges, and 2 judges on the Court of International Trade. And they represent the best of America. It's all about preserving the Constitution. I made 3 speeches in this campaign, in my term as president. One when I first entered saying democracy is at stake, one I later made, anyway, I made 3 major speeches. The institutions are in jeopardy, in my view. And some of the decisions coming down, to me, made no constitutional sense. They're all highly qualified people we've known. They've had distinguished legal, judicial, and academic careers. It matters. Judges matter. You know, shaping the everyday lives of Americans, protecting our basic freedoms. You never thought we'd be talking about this. Defending constitutional liberties, respecting the idea precedent matters. Precedent matters. These judges will be independent, they'll be fair, and they'll be impartial. And they'll respect the rule of law. And most importantly, I know it sounds, I never thought I'd be saying this, they'll uphold the Constitution. They'll uphold the Constitution. When I ran for president, I made a promise that I'd have a bench that looks like America, that taps into the full talents of this nation. And I'm proud we've kept our commitment with the help of these two men and many others, bolstering confidence in judicial decision-making and outcomes. We have a record number of judges with backgrounds and experiences that have long been overlooked in the federal judiciary, like advocates for civil rights, workers' rights, immigrant rights, and so much more. The first former public defender to sit in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. We also have continued to put forward men and women who have been prosecutors and plaintiffs' attorneys, which has been a distant past in of courts. No matter who they are or where they come from, all these appointees understand the role of a judge and are committed to the rule of law, the institutional safeguards built into our Constitution that upholds the rights and guarantees of the Constitution. You know, I've appointed the most demographically diverse slate of judicial nominees ever in the history of America. That represents all of America and the best of America. There's numerous historic firsts. The first black woman in the United States Supreme Court. I made that promise and we kept it. More black women in the courts of appeals than every other previous administration in American history combined. Other historic firsts for Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Muslim Americans. The list goes on. But the point is, for the first time in a long, long time, we have a bench that looks like and represents all of America, all of America. And a special thank you again to Leader Schumer and Chair Durbin, working tirelessly to move these nominations through the committee and onto the Senate floor in a very, I think it's not an understatement, it's a very contentious political period in American history. I remember, think about it, one vote majority. I mean, it's amazing what they did. Other senators, Democrats and Republicans alike, work with my administration to fill vacancies in their states. You know, all these Republican senators, they weren't sending me Democratic nominees. They were sending Republican nominees. But we got sort of back to the basics, finding basic commitment to civil rights, civil liberties. Whether it was your counterpart and the leader of the Republican Party in Kentucky or wherever, we've got people who understand the institutional limitations and safeguards in the Constitution. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. This includes some of my conservative friends in Indiana, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Texas. But they're also got appointed, and they're not Democrats. But they understand the institutional structure of the court. Together, these judges are going to hear cases and issues ruling from everything as whether Americans can cast their ballot. I mean, literally, how they can cast their ballot, when it will be counted, whether workers can unionize. I thought we settled that in 1934. And make a living wage for their families. Whether children can breathe clean air and drink clean water and be mandated by the Congress to do so. These judges also are a vital check on the excesses of other branches of government, including Congress and the executive branch when they overreach and run afoul of the constitutional and institutional safeguards. So let me close with this. I'm proud of the legacy that we'll leave for our nation as it relates to judges. And I'm proud of the men and women who stepped forward and heeded the call to serve. I really mean it. Think about it. If I looked at some of you and said, I want to nominate you, you said, in this time? No, I'm serious. Well, I mean, I know this room is probably the only room that fully would understand and comprehend that. And folks, I know they'll continue to uphold our nation's founding principles of liberty, justice, equality, and do it for decades to come. As we say in my own neighborhood, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. But all kidding aside, I'm really proud of the caliber, capacity, willingness, and the academic backgrounds of all these men and women we appointed. In fact, we appointed more women than others. It's just because I was raised in a household where all the women are smarter than all the men. But all kidding aside, I really think we'll be proud of these women and men that have been appointed. And I think we're going to reestablish the safeguards that are built into the Constitution. Everybody, everybody has an equal opportunity. That's what it's all about. So thank you all and all the leaders in this room for all you've done. Wouldn't have got done without you guys. Thanks for the recommendations and all the help. But most importantly, these two guys. The idea that from the beginning, when we had that first conversation, Chuck said we're going to appoint all these judges, we looked at each other like, are we kidding ourselves, right? Thank you, pal. Thank you. And Dick, by the way, I've ruined his reputation by bragging so much about him. I was hesitant to do it during the election year because it might hurt him, but all kidding aside, every time we get in trouble, I literally ask my staff, I say, Durbin's there. Durbin's there. Thank you. You're the best, pal. Thank you. You really are. Thank you. Thank you all so very much.